Welcome to Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. I am your host, Heath Cummings, joined today by the man known by many different names, Scott Boulanger, a.k.a. Jax Falcone, a.k.a. Dino Game Theory on the socials. Man, it's been a while since we've talked, and I always enjoy it when you come on. So first off, it's the craziest time of year. So we're putting out draft coverage. We're putting out week one stuff. We're talking Dynasty today. I know you're as busy as I am. Thank you for making the time today. Tell everybody what you've been working on and where they can find all your work.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. This is when Dynasty turns to redraft,
In a lot of ways, yes.
Even the Dynasty leagues are now redraft leagues like this moment. You can find us, the Undroppables everywhere. I will say our new show, the Dynasty Underground, has been very, very widely enjoyed by everybody. We can find that and my show, The Undrafted, on YouTube. Both of them are on YouTube now, which, the Undrafted was not for a long time. So if you're a YouTuber, find us there.
Today's show is going to be all about, well, not all about, but a lot about patience. Dynasty managers are supposed to be much more patient than redraft managers, though we're not always. And it can be, I was just talking before the show about the week one reactions that are coming and the difficulty we have with not overreacting, not underreacting. The joke in the industry, of course, is if this is something I thought was going to happen, then it's definitely real and will continue all year long. If this is something that surprised me, then it was a 1 week blip and nobody should overreact. But we're going to talk about some rookies, some vets, and just how much patience Dynasty managers should have. There's going to be a Harold Fannin love fest because a lot of times I have people come on this show that have to kind of talk me down about Harold Fannin. I do not think that will be the case today. And then we're also going to talk about a little section at the end called Is It Over? And I don't necessarily mean our career's over, but maybe our elite stretch is over, or is hope over for some guys who, well, I don't know if there's any reason to have any more patience at all. But let's start with 3 questions for our guest. And I go through the Twitter feed occasionally when I've got somebody on and I'm like, who have they been talking about a lot? And I don't know if you know who stands out on your feed, but it's our first question. So Jackson Dart, very good preseason for that young man, starting the season behind Russell Wilson. So look into your crystal ball. What week does he get his first start? And does he help Dynasty managers this year?
Yeah, Heath, without a game having been played, I am running super hot right now. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen when actual football play happens, but man, oh man, are some of my takes running hot without any results as of yet. Jackson Dart's certainly one of them. When you asked me this question on the show sheet, I was thinking, okay, well, let's just put the over under at half the season, 8.5 games. So just in my mind, I had to answer the question that way. And I would say it's sooner than that. It's going to be hard. Like, there's so much excitement for him. He gave really everybody, certainly the New York Giant fans, but probably even the players, front office, coaches. I'm sure he gave them some excitement. I'm sure there's some hope in there. I'm sure there's some, delusions of grandeur potentially. I mean, he really, really showed himself so effectively in those, those preseason games, which I know are meaningless, but not in this way. So I would say he's inevitable. I think Jackson Dart is inevitable. I've made already 2 trades this offseason, recently, for Jackson Dart ahead of this, season. Jackson Dart, I think, is inevitable. And I think he's going to find himself in the, maybe as high as Bo Nix, but certainly in the JJ McCarthy value spot very, very soon, as soon as he starts playing and rushing 4 yards. So yeah, Jackson Dart inevitable and sooner than 8 games.
Christian joined the chat just to say I had to tell you live, I got Harold Fannin off waivers in my Dynasty League this morning. Fantastic work. That's a great, great feeling. I've had a couple of rounds of waivers where I was able to pick up maybe like an Ollie Gordon or somebody that I kind of liked beforehand, but I only had 3 rookie picks and didn't have any room for him in the rookie draft. It's wonderful. And that's why, and I this is just kind of off subject, but I always tell people in Dynasty Leagues, I actually prefer a little bit of a dead waivers period between the rookie draft and training camp. so that we have a waivers period.
Right.
So there's somebody exciting to add. Yes.
Yeah.
If waivers are just open all summer, then we get to September and you go to waivers and you're like, oh, there's Daniel Jones. That's exciting. Can't wait. It's question number 2. And this is me trolling a little bit. I have nothing against Bill. I do love chaos. And I don't know if any rookie's been talked about more on social media and on fantasy football articles than Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Yep. And then we get this report yesterday that you should probably expect Chris Rodriguez to have more carries in week 1 than Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Is this going to turn into one of the funniest collective hype stories in recent memory?
Yes and no, probably, but yes and no. I mean, on one hand, he is a 6th year, 7th round rookie who has little to no college profile outside of a 5th year at New Mexico. In those 6 seasons, he caught only 34 total passes. So there are some giant red flags, right? Like if I just told you that, you're not interested. But on the other hand, he did have that season. It was pretty good and was supposedly poised to have another one with Arizona in 2024, but some wonky circumstances changed all that. In amidst all of that, he was drafted, right? And then he subsequently made the Washington front office feel like B-Rob was expendable, or presumably, right? And, all of that, and all that we're hearing from Commanders camp is that he's totally awesome. So like we sort of have a lot of positive and negative data points here. I think the pass catching sort of downside, not that Chris Rodriguez really has the upside, but Eckler's there. I think he's going to be a valuable sort of first and second down, maybe goal line back. Doesn't that kind of make him kind of like Brian Robinson? So I think the hype is probably overblown and his ceiling is probably Brian Robinson, which is fine. So I think it's probably a little bit of both, but it's also possible, like you say, that Chris Rodriguez like kind of eats his lunch and this dude only gets like 4 or 5 carries a game. That would be a hilarious run out.
I do think part of the problem I have with the whole theory is you talk about Brian Robinson as the upside. And once Austin Eckler's gone, that might look like something different because Robinson did have some big games last year when Eckler was out. And Eckler had a couple of big games when Robinson was out. When they both played, you got a situation where you've got one back who's clearly going to take most of the passing game work. And you have a quarterback and Austin Eckler that are probably going to combine for 13 to 15 rush attempts per game.
Right.
So you better get every last drop of the rest of the running back work if you're going to be good in fantasy. The only thing I will say is, having done my week 1 projections, and we'll talk about those more through the show, as excited as you were to get him on your roster, as well as this has gone so far for you, if you've decided not to take the profit and trade him for a 2nd round pick,
do that.
If you don't want to do that, if you really want to ride this out, I'm still not starting him week 1. Like we need to see that he actually has the role we hope he has before I'm starting him. And
it'd have to be some sicko deep, 16 team league to start him in week 1. But other than that, no, absolutely not.
So you mentioned you've already bought Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt in a couple, or Jackson Dart in a couple of places. Yeah. Who is the guy? We've got a couple of days left before week 1 hits. Is there anybody you're trying to buy before the season starts because you think their value is just going to skyrocket?
The answer was going to be Jackson Dart, but because we had him in other spots, I wasn't going to answer that way. And there's a couple other players, Fannin that, I'm not going to mention here, Ibuka, whatever. So I'm going to actually go with Bryce Hall. Okay. I think there's just a lot of negative sentiment around Bryce Hall and that offense and what's going to happen. And, the hard part is that they have a little bit of a tough schedule in the first couple weeks. Pittsburgh, not a great spot. Even if he gets 100% of the rush share in week 1, it's not like I expect a huge week from Bryce Hall. And I think maybe that's what this question was, is like, who's going off in week 1. But I do think that in Dynasty, Bryce Hall right now is soured tremendously. And like literally what people are imagining is that it's like an ugly 50-50 split where he doesn't really do much. Like that's kind of where he feels like he's being valued right now. And I think that's probably worst case scenario and not likely. I think what's most likely is that he's awesome. Everybody in the New York Jets coaching staff sees that, knows that. He gets the lion's share of everything. He gets all the sort of running back targets because of course he will, over Braylon Allen, who's not a pass catching back. And he pays off. Right. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, what the hell were we thinking? I think there's going to be a sort of come to Jesus correction with Bryce Hall. he's not necessarily a top 5 back necessarily, but he's certainly not outside the top 12 where a lot of people have him right now in terms of dynasty asset. He's younger than most of these other backs, like, Bucky Irving, I think, even, or something. He's really close to these guys' age, Chase Brown, etc. And yet we're sort of treating him like he's an over the hill, dusty back. And that is surprising to me. So Bryce Hall, go get him.
Bryce Hall still my number 12 running back in Dynasty. And I did think, looking at the over-unders on FanDuel at least, Bryce Hall's rushing over-under this week's right around 50 yards. Braylon Allen's is 26. So that just kind of points to what you were saying. Yes, Braylon Allen's going to have a role. No, it's probably not going to be a 50-50 split. It's just that they want Braylon Allen involved as well. That's fine. Every running back is in some sort of committee except for like 3. So don't worry about that so much. Let's take our first break. When we get back, we're going to talk about the rookies we need to be patient with. But first, I want to talk about Trevor Lawrence, and I might say something good.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
So I've kind of built a little bit of a brand around mocking people who have been too take lucky with the Trevor Lawrence could still be an elite quarterback. Trevor Lawrence could still be a great quarterback. And there's people that believe that today. And I went through my week 1 projections, and the Panthers and the Jaguars play each other. And it's just a beautiful matchup for quarterbacks.
Right.
But 2 not very good defenses, 2 young quarterbacks who just added studs to their receiving core, and Lawrence gets Liam Cohen. And there's some other guys that have bad matchups. And Trevor Lawrence is QB8 in my week 1 projections. Bryce Young's almost in the top 12. And so we're going to talk about patience from the perspective of if these guys struggle, because not wanting to get too down on them too quick. But I want to talk about it the other direction for a second.
Yeah.
If Trevor Lawrence and or Bryce Young start this season off on a heater, and it starts week 1, should we be patient in increasing their value, or all wheels up?
I think in general, you need to be ready to sell on hotness in Dynasty for sure. If there's ever hotness that you feel has crested past, or at least at a player's ceiling, why not sell? Especially if you can buy something that is, the inverse of that, right? I will say I've been a Trevor Lawrence defender to a fault. I mean, I at least I'm aware. I don't know what step I'm on of the 12 steps, but I'm somewhere along the line. I'm not in denial, but I do think this is the sort of Trevor Lawrence last chance here with everything you just said. Liam Cohen, just there's too much there that if he fails here now. Look, I know they're tied to a bigger contract, but we've seen, even Deshaun Watson was yanked. I mean, there's ways to get this off. Okay, so I would be selling, and then Bryce Young, I'm very, very dubious. So I would be itching to sell Bryce Young as soon as possible. By the way, real quick, one of the trades I made for Jackson Dart, just to show you where I'm at, was Trevor Lawrence for Jackson Dart and Christian Watson.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's very in on Jackson Dart. And I do think that's like people who have been backing Trevor Lawrence for 3 or 4 years are maybe even a little bit more skeptical of a good Trevor Lawrence game, just because it's hard when you've been on the wrong side of a guy to switch back to the other side. Let's start with some rookies, and a couple of these are like patience in terms of people might start thinking about dropping them. The first one is not. Caleb Johnson is obviously going to be held on to dynasty rosters all year long and probably through next year. But it hasn't been a great couple of months for Caleb Johnson. The preseason, he looked average at best. The main reports out of training camp have been A, that he cannot pass block, and B, that Kenneth Gainwell is going to be involved also. Jaylen Warren gets a 2-year contract extension. I think people are already starting to downgrade Caleb Johnson a little bit. Yeah. He's not played a football game. I'm expecting early in the season, his workload is not going to look like what we had hoped it was going to look like his rookie season. How patient should people be with Caleb Johnson? And are you downgrading him already?
Absolutely downgrading. I have one share. I'm in 22 depending, I've got a couple wonky leagues, like a
Right.
full IDP crazy league. I don't even count that one. But, I'm in basically 22 leagues. I have one Caleb Johnson, and I hate it. You know what I mean? I don't like it. I picked him ahead of players that I don't even want to mention. And it was like, okay, I tried to split, you try to split assets and,
Right.
not just take the same draft every time. I'm not loving it. And part of it here, we can say, first of all, Pittsburgh is kind of a mess. It's not necessarily, an offense I'm buying into, at least in the short term, but also in the long term. Caleb Johnson doesn't really profile as a pass catcher. And for all of those reasons, as well as Jaylen Warren's presence, I don't know that Caleb Johnson necessarily has the upside that we want him to have. So, yeah, I would absolutely. I mean, look, if you can just sell for a future first, I would do it. Yes.
So I think that the interesting guy here, and as of right now, he's still, I guess, technically a free agent or something. Somebody has his rights, but he's not on a team. Quinshon Judkins,
Yeah,
we're hoping is going to sign with the Browns any day now. When we were way back in April and May, there was no contest for me. I thought Quinshon Judkins was a lot better than Caleb Johnson. A lot's happened in the last couple of months.
Yeah.
On a dynasty roster today, would you rather have Caleb Johnson or Quinshon Judkins?
well, that's how close it is. I didn't have that answer off the cuff. I think it's probably closely Caleb Johnson, just because he's not facing legal and he is signed. And there's some similar problems that exist for Quinshon. I think he's a little bit more of a pass catcher, but he's also on a terrible offense. He's got a little bit of competition there. He's unsigned and one strike away from a big problem.
Bashal Tutin is what was kind of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt before Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was. Everybody, as soon as he signed, just assumed, well, this is the guy Liam Cohen wanted. Out with the first round pick, Travis Etienne. Out with the 4.6 yards per carry, Tank Bigsby. It's going to be all Bashal Tutin. Looks like to start the week, it's going to be Travis Etienne, or start the season, it's going to be Travis Etienne. It's going to be Tank Bigsby. We're talking about a day 3 running back, and Jacob Gibbs has 17 Twitter threads about how fast and good Bashal Tutin is. So I don't want to understate the talent, but we're still talking about a day 3 running back who may spend a large portion of this season as the RB3 for Jacksonville. How patient would you advise people to be with Tutin?
I mean, I put, what did I put? I put like, yes, but be ready to sell. Like, that's kind of my sort of thought. It's like, we really liked Bashal Tutin, at the Dynasty Underground. We talked about him pre-draft. We really loved him. And then he gets drafted to a great situation. Then he gets steamed up into mid-second round. And look, if I can get mid-second round or better, like if I can get a projected early second round pick for Bashal Tutin, any future pick, I would take it and sell. Absolutely. There is the upside. I know Joe Kuvatakis, my partner at Underground, would always just be saying, you can't do that yet. We have to see, this is a huge upside play, because he does have the upside. He's got a big body. He's got breakaway running, breakaway rate in his college profile. He's fast, speed score through the roof. Like, this is exactly what we're looking for in that Liam Cohen offense, right? There's so much there. He could be this year's, quote unquote, Bucky Irving, everybody's saying. But I just go the other way, that I'm old enough to have seen so many of these players, all of them, fail and flop, that I'm willing to sell. And there's going to be another player you're going to ask me about that's going to have a very similar answer that people will be surprised if they know me. So,
yeah, no, I never had Bashal Tutin in round 2. So yeah, if I could get a round 2 for him now, that'd be fantastic. It's not, I don't know how realistic it is. I think the difficult thing is, like, I've got several rosters where you've got Trey Benson, and you've got Blake Corum, and you've got Ray Davis, and you've got Bashal Tutin all sitting on your bench, because you want those backup running back lottery tickets.
Yep.
But if you're in a contending window and somebody comes up on the waiver wire, you may get in a situation where you have to choose, do I want this guy who's going to help me win a game this week, or do I want 5 of these backup running backs? And the difference right now between Tutin and the other guys is they're all one injury away from a semi-feature role.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure that he is.
In shallower managed leagues, you're absolutely right. He becomes a lot less, exciting, because you're right. He could be boxing you out from production. So you're absolutely right.
Angelo said I added Ollie Gordon off the wire. You'd rather have Ollie Gordon than Bashal Tutin, right?
It's close. I'm
Yeah.
not so sure. Yeah, it's a lot closer than it was. I put all those running backs in a big bucket, because you never really know. When we were doing the preseason stuff, I was like, we would be ranking these running backs. I'm like, I don't know which starting running back's going to get hurt. So how do I know which one's going to, you know what I mean? Like if you tell me Achane gets hurt, then of course I want Ollie Gordon. If you tell me that Travis Etienne pops an ACL, then yes, I want Bashal Tutin. So these backup running backs are a little bit what's in front of them dependent. They both have a pretty clear upside, but right now Ollie is a clear number 2. But we'll see all about. You never know.
The concern that I have with Tutin is I don't know. Like you mentioned, Travis Etienne getting hurt. I almost think I'm more sure of Tutin's role if Tank Bigsby gets hurt.
Sure.
Because I don't know for sure that Tutin's going to function well in the NFL in the passing game, and his hands are questionable at best. So he might.
The issues for Bashal Tutin have been ball security and sort of the trust factors.
Pass protection,
like all those things. So those are the things that are a little bit scary because he's not necessarily going to be trusted to be a 1A unless that improves.
Let's go to a couple of wide receivers, and this is I'm going to let you take most of this one because I've been preaching Luther Burden all summer long and do not care about Olamide Zaccheaus. And if he goes 6 weeks behind Olamide Zaccheaus, that's fine. He can still be a league winner in the second half of the season and beyond. So I am preaching ultimate patience on Luther Burden, who fell to round 2 of rookie drafts late in the summer. Are you with me on Luther Burden, or are you 100%? Yes. Like there's no amount of patience this year that's too much for Luther Burden.
Agree, because even the situation that's why he's in the second round, because he didn't get a clear path in year 1. Look, if he had gotten, let's say he gets the Green Bay spot, all of a sudden, everybody's like, so everything can change pretty quickly. And it could change for him with one little injury or something happening in Chicago. That being said, I put capital YES when you ask this question in my notes, because you have to be. I've had a number of people come after a few of my Luther Burden shares, and every single time I've basically been like, you need to pay me a single first round pick, and we'll do that. I just counter a future first, any one of them, and if I'm selling, and they're like, oh, use the second round. I'm like, okay, well then he's worth a second still, and I'm not selling for that. So I'm not like itching to sell. Maybe I could sell at a profit immediately, because I think if he does hit where we expect him to hit, he's worth a first in the future.
100%. Jaden Higgins. Am I remembering right that Jaden Higgins, a few months ago, you were on this show saying some really nice things about Jaden Higgins. And,
yes.
and I do believe that there was an unofficial depth chart that came out today that saw him starting week 1. There had been some talk he might have to start behind Xavier Hutchinson. So thankfully that didn't happen. But it's Nico Collins and Christian Kirk probably at the top of that target tree. We may have to be a little bit patient with Jaden Higgins, although Nico's missed plenty of time over his first 4 years in the league. How patient are you being with Jaden Higgins?
You got to be patient. Same type of thing. I'm maybe a little less sort of excited about the potential upside of a Jaden Higgins. I do think he's probably a number 2 in the league. Luther Burden has a little bit of a certain spice of upside that, you really kind of want to see happen. And once it happens, it might be a very, expensive asset to sell. So that'd be good. Mm-hmm. Jaden Higgins, I think, is just sort of locked in as a team's WR2, and a good one at that. But the Xavier Hutchinson stuff and all the rest of it make it so that there could be some cloudy waters to start the season. He might be announced the starter, but he still could play behind Xavier Hutchinson. He might not see the field in 2 wide receiver sets. He might not get as many targets, not as many scheme things for him, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there are 2 veterans, one who's an elite NFL wide receiver, Nico Collins, and Christian Kirk, who's vastly underrated and should command a ton of targets until or unless he gets hurt.
Trey Harris was a guy who was a round 2 pick for me at the beginning of the summer when I re-ranked the rookies most recently. He did not make my top 24 picks. I know people aren't going to like that. From my understanding, he's been outperformed by Quentin Johnston in camp this year. They went and added Keenan Allen. I almost said Keandre Lambert-Smith because he's been the rookie who's gotten all the positive buzz in Los Angeles. Have you downgraded Trey Harris at all? And are you expecting anything from him in the first half of the season?
Yes, I've downgraded him. I do agree with you, actually, even though it hurt to hear. I kind of agree. I don't know that I've pulled him out of my top 24. I still have him, mid to late for second, 18 there. I have him there, give or take, if we started to maybe make some adjustments right now. But, I think there's some issues there that I'm not really worried about, like other players like Quentin Johnson or Keandre Lambert-Smith specifically outplaying him, although that's possible. I'm more concerned about, even if he kind of gets there, where there is.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, he's never taking over Ladd McConkey. Ladd is going to be the alpha over Trey Harris forever, period. Like, he would have to be Calvin Johnson to sort of, elevate past Ladd. So I don't see that. I see him as a number 2, maybe in the breadth of Jaden Higgins, but also on a lower volume pass offense with the tendency to run and with some other weapons, namely KLS1, as we refer to him, Keandre Lambert-Smith. So yeah, he's sort of put some pressure on him. And yeah, I don't love the prognosis for Trey Harris. Again, I would not be selling light. If I can sell for that, projected mid to upper second in the future, I would do so. And that a lot of people would be surprised to hear me say that, because I really liked Trey Harris. And I still do, but I just don't think that his upside will push him into the value of a future first. So therefore, if you can kind of, sort of re-roll is the idea.
Right.
If you can re-roll Trey Harris, you might as well do it, because I don't think you're going to see too much production in year 1 anyhow.
No, I have a hard time seeing how his value goes up, because even though a lot of us may think that Keenan Allen's washed, his relationship with Justin Herbert and his technical ability and route running, I think it's still going to get him 7 targets a game for as long as he's upright. And that makes everyone else in the offense just kind of like, well, I hope they catch a 50-yard touchdown this week, because that's probably the only way they're going to help me in fantasy. Few tight ends I want to mention, and then I'll get to a question. So Elijah Arroyo, I don't expect much from rookie tight ends that aren't first-round picks early in the year. If you drafted him, he might be best served on your practice squad. Mason Taylor might get a little more of an opportunity, but practice patience if you liked both of those guys. One guy you might not need to be patient with is Harold Fannin. Is this just the Browns slot wide receiver?
Bro, I can't even tell you. Like every pod I've done, I bring him up. This is like, I was the Harold Fannin guy. He's like, I think he's my most rostered tight end in Dynasty. Like,
he is mine.
I just couldn't say no. I just love him. And the take was always very simple. Most of these tight ends don't work out. Like most of them, you just go back in time, you look, you're like, oh, bust, because there's only 5 or 6, awesome tight ends in the NFL right now. So that's all the draft classes, 10 or 15 draft classes back, and there's still only 5. So you can just do the math. Even a simple math, will tell you, oh yeah, they're probably not going to be good. And so, okay, but what if they are good? Well, if they are good, then what are they? And the thing about Harold Fannin that we know is, if he is actually good at what he does is catch a ton of passes all over the field and run after the catch.
Yeah.
Sign me up. And right
that
now,
sounds a lot like David Njoku.
Yeah. And right now, Cleveland is basically saying he's awesome. They're like, dude, this guy can do it all. He's a great blocker, which we talked about on the Underground, that blocking doesn't really matter for fantasy, except for it gets you on the field, and you have to be on the field to score fantasy points. Just found this out this past year. Yeah, that's right.
Armin in the chat says the Browns should trade Njoku. You know what? He's going to be a free agent after this year.
Yeah, he's a free agent.
Yes. We can deal with 1 year of Harold Fannin just giving us the flashes. I made the joke before his first preseason game, and nothing happened. It was his last preseason game where he scored the touchdown with the starters. But I said, this is your last chance to go trade a second for Harold Fannin, because I was drafting him in the second.
Yes.
And I got him in the third a couple times too. But yeah, absolutely love him. Are there any other rookies that I didn't mention that you want to make sure people are patient with?
Yeah, Jarquez Hunter would be one. I think, Jarquez Hunter is going to be in an interesting sort of, committee, if you will, or maybe he's not quite the handcuff. I think Blake Corum is the replica of Kyron Williams. Jarquez Hunter is some other animal, and that animal could become a predator. But, if Kyron got hurt tomorrow, I don't think it's just like automatically Jarquez. I think, so he's not necessarily a handcuff, but I do think he has explosion, and he has stuff that neither of those two backs have in terms of his ability to break tackles and house things. Those two guys are, sort of technicians, whereas he's, Lamborghini. So I would practice patience with Jarquez Hunter. You missed Terrence Ferguson. I like Terrence Ferguson quite a bit, certainly much more than Mason Taylor. And I don't know exactly when, but I do think by next year, Terrence Ferguson could be meaningful. Again, most of these guys fail, so maybe he will too, but they did draft him with draft capital. And they did the thing they did when they drafted Puka with Terrence Ferguson in the war room, if you will, where they were really, really stoked about that. So I think Terrence Ferguson too. And lastly, I think Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe is not going to come out there and just, deal right off the bat. He's going to need some time, and he probably won't even get playing time unless Sam Darnold falls flat on his face, which is possible. And so therefore, Milroe's one of those sort of Jalen Hurts type bets. Jalen Hurts playing behind Carson Wentz feels eerily similar to Jalen Milroe playing behind Sam Darnold. He also could crap out, but if he hits, he's got Jalen Hurts type ceiling.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Jalen Milroe because I wanted to talk about some non-rookies that people may be struggling to have patience with. And let's talk about Anthony Richardson because a lot of people losing the job to Daniel Jones was the final straw for a lot of dynasty fantasy football managers, even in super flex leagues. I will not. I'm not going to cut him. No. I've seen Daniel Jones play football for half of a decade. Yep. I know his injury history. I know his performance history. I think Anthony Richardson is getting a chance to start a game again this year. And anytime he's in the starting lineup for the Colts, he's ranked close to the top 12 for fantasy football analysts. Yes. So I think in super flex leagues, it's easy to say he must be rostered. How deep does a league, if it's a one quarterback league, have to be for you to still have Anthony Richardson on your roster?
Well, in a one quarterback league, I'm taking him ahead of all the sort of Geno Smiths and Sam Darnolds and Bryce Young and all those players because you don't really need those types of players in a one quarterback league because you already have, if you don't have a quarterback and you're banking on Bryce Young, you're losing anyway. You really need to have an advantage at the position. So you really want to have a top 6 or 7. Look, if you have a top 12 or 14, you still don't need the 20th and 23rd quarterbacks on your roster. It doesn't matter in a one quarterback league. You're really looking for, I'd rather have Jalen Milroe and Anthony Richardson and those types of players just sort of dice rolls on the bench to do exactly what you say, which is once they hit the field, they're top 12 quarterbacks, period, in fantasy, not in real life, in fantasy. I do think we've seen, too many times now, over and over, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Justin Fields,
Sam
the list
Darnold.
goes. Yep, Sam Darnold, the guy in front of the guy we just mentioned. I mean, so there are plenty of players that have been given second chances. It'd be crazy not to give Anthony Richardson a second chance with everything he possesses. Now, he could just be a ding-dong, right? I always say, like, the one thing we don't know is these guys, we don't know their makeup. We don't know how they act. We've heard the Jamarcus Russells, the Ryan Leafs, and, in hindsight, they tell us all about, like, how they were just – even Ryan Leaf will tell you himself, I was an idiot. And so maybe that's him. Maybe he grows up. I have no clue about any of that, but I do know what you said, which is exactly right. If he gets on the field, he's a dope fantasy play. And for those reasons, you got to keep hope.
I love it. Let's compare these next two running backs together because I think dynasty managers are pretty steadfast in if I drafted this guy in round 3 and he's a backup running back, I'm going to hold him all year, whether the guy in front of him gets hurt or not. When we get to year 2 backups, year 3 backups, those are often the guys that get cut when somebody needs to add a quarterback or a tight end or something like that. Yeah. So Kendre Miller, right now, the clear handcuff to Alvin Kamara. Blake Corum currently ahead of Jarquez Hunter, but it would be some sort of committee if Kyron went down. I guess, are you trying to be patient holding on to those two guys? And if you had to cut one in a dynasty league in a few weeks, which one do you think it would be?
Corum.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, like, this is crazy. I don't think, Corum just doesn't have the upside. I mean, I'm not sure that he has the job if Kyron goes down. So unclear handcuff is where Kendre had been before. But now it feels like and seems like and sounds like from everything that, they're saying, head coach all the way through that Kendre is their number 2 and they like him. Unlike, the old coaching staff, they actually do like him and think he's good, which makes sense because we certainly thought he was good coming out. Maybe there was some knucklehead there too. You never know, right? So I think with Kendre now as the clear backup to a 30-year-old pass catching running back, I mean, what could go wrong, right? I mean, look, Kamara's been awesome and actually been pretty healthy, but I don't predict injuries either way, but I do know that it's more likely as they get older that they could be injured. And if Kendre can get on the field, he's a 3-down skill set with explosion, size, and speed. He's got the full package. If I'm making a bet, I'd rather bet on Kendre over Corum, me personally.
Had a vet backup question in the chat, so we'll ask for Christian again. Thanks, Christian. Should Dameon Pierce be a priority add, or do we think that ship has sailed? I've added him in a couple of leagues here recently. I think we have very little clarity on that Texans backfield.
Agreed.
And guessing, like betting on the fact that Nick Chubb could be dust doesn't seem like a bet with no outs.
Right. Well, it's like you hold up your finger like, wait, Mixon, no. It's like, Chubb, I don't think so. Woody Marks, like we're going to sit here and bet on Woody Marks. I mean, I know a lot of people like Woody Marks, but trust me, the profile is not that impressive. The pass catching was volume based. He was never explosive as a pass catcher, never explosive as a runner, not a tackle breaker, really just kind of a below average running back who got a lot of volume and for that reason got overdrafted. He got drafted over DJ Giddens. Crazy. Right. What the hell are you doing? I mean, imagine DJ Giddens right now. He'd be the clear one. So when you sort of start to process of elimination, it does kind of bring you back to Dameon Pierce. And in that offense, they're running a scheme that fits him better than the previous administration did for him. And so I think, therefore, Dameon Pierce could be the answer. The problem with all of this is that their offensive line is terrible. And so the answer could really be none of the above.
Right.
But yes, Dameon Pierce is a quality add, and you should definitely be putting him on your roster, especially at his current cost, which is almost nothing.
Yeah, he's just about free and on the waiver wire in a lot of leagues. At the wide receiver position, I've got 4 guys. I just want you to tell me, who are you going to be the most patient with this year, and who are you pretty much already ready to cut? The 4 names are Xavier Legette, Cedric Tillman, Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims. You could make a case for or against any of those guys, and if I asked 20 analysts, I'd probably find 4 different favorites. Well, but who's the guy you're going to be the most patient with, and who's the one who you're out on?
Well, I loved Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims coming out based off of a lot of different things, including our wide receiver model. Liked them both. Apparently, Sean Payton just hates me personally and everything I stand for sure, because he just won't stick with a wide receiver. For those reasons, it's probably not them. Well, then it comes down to Xavier Legette. I'm 0 shares, 0 cares Xavier Legette. Honestly, I think that this would be the perfect opportunity to sell Xavier Legette, who looks like the wide receiver 2 on paper, but they don't play these games on paper. You do have to earn targets. He's not been able to do that. I don't think that he's the answer. And so to me, it's clearly Cedric Tillman, who actually could be the wide receiver 1 in Cleveland. Lest we forget, a lot of Jerry Jeudy's numbers from last year were volume based. He did not become a more efficient wide receiver. He did not earn targets. You think about this. He had like 140 targets. He didn't actually earn targets at a better rate than he had in his previous 4 or 5 seasons, whatever it was. It was actually the very same rate, even a little bit less, I think, if I did the math right.
He ran a lot more routes.
He ran almost 800 routes. Let me tell you, that's not happening again this year. He averaged about 450 to 500. He ran 770s or something like that. It's absolutely incredible. So I think the sort of Jerry Jeudy hype is a little bit too high. And Cedric Tillman was kind of dope when he was playing alongside of him.
No, I think Tillman is probably the right answer. I do think Xavier Legette might be a nice, if you're playing a little DFS this weekend and want to put together a Trevor Lawrence stack, you might want a little Xavier Legette coming back on the other way, because he's very cheap and he does have an opportunity early in the year.
Someone told me this was a Dynasty show. I didn't know we were talking.
It is.
I'm only giving you a hard time.
The reason I say that is I think, I don't want to be done with him at this point, because I think there's a chance he actually has a good game or two.
Ooh. If you could sell after that
before Jalen Coker comes back, and then maybe you could add, because right now I don't think you could get anything for him at all. But a couple of good games, you might be able to pull something for Legette. He is also the one you should be the least patient with, because if he's not good now, there's no reason to believe he ever will be. 3 tight ends. I'll ask you the same question, And somebody had mentioned Kyle Pitts in the chat already. I mean, we're talking about patience, right? We've only had 5 years worth of patience with him. It's 4 or 3. Jatavian Sanders, Theo Johnson, Kyle Pitts. Who are you being the most patient with? Who are you being the least?
Well, Kyle Pitts, you can't be patient with anymore. It's probably not happening. And I think what we've learned is that even if it happens, it ain't it. It's not what we thought it was. He's not a two-way tight end. He just isn't. He's a one-trick pony, and that trick is not good enough to beat cornerbacks. What all that means is that he's not an inline player, can't play in line because he gets moved around. He can't block. He can't really affect the game in a positive manner from in line, so they have to split him out. He's just not special enough out there to create mismatches. He's not Harold Fannin out there, and I mean that with all due respect. So he's kind of a tweener. A modern-day tweener is what Kyle Pitts is, and for those reasons, no patience. I would sell immediately for whatever I could sort of get that befits his current value. Sanders and Theo Johnson, I have them both in the same bucket. They're literally back-to-back in my dynasty rankings. I see them very, very similarly with opportunity, with skill set, with value. I guess I'll just lean my chip towards Jatavian Sanders for the reasons we just talked about. Jalen Coker, out. Thielen, gone. Leggett, bad. Hey, maybe it's Jatavian Sanders who finds his way into sort of a ballooned target rate for the first 3, 4, 5 games, and then you can sell him on the hotness. Because I don't think he's an elite tight end, but he could sort of, cosplay as one for a few weeks here.
Let's take our second break. When we come back, we'll play a quick game of Is It Over? We are back. I'll try to qualify each of these. The first one, there's no qualification needed. I am literally asking if he's ever going to play football again. Is it over for Deshaun Watson? I've got him in an IR spot in one of my league. My IR is full now. If somebody else gets hurt, do I just cut Deshaun Watson?
You can. Yeah, I think it's over. It's, as we say, it's Jover, right?
It's Jover. Isaac Guerendo, the 49ers went out and traded for Brian Robinson to back up Christian McCaffrey. Guerendo's had a heck of a time staying healthy in both practice and games.
Yeah.
Is it over for Isaac Guerendo?
I don't think so. I think the idea of Brian Robinson was for the San Francisco 49ers was more for injuries than it was for, look, Guerendo can't play if we need him to. It's look, if they're hurt, we're kind of in a pickle. They had a bunch of injuries even behind everybody. Like everybody was hurt. Right. Kiner, like everybody, it was like all the way up and down was hurt, and they became thin at the position, after, Jordan Mason. So I think they just needed another body, and especially a veteran body, to make sure that they could, play Christian McCaffrey the exact amount they want to without feeling like, we got to put him back in there for more, even though he's tired or fatigued or, overworked because we don't have anybody else. So I think that's what the Brian Robinson thing is. I say that if Christian McCaffrey were to pop an ACL in week 1, you're really going to tell me it's just Brian Robinson and it's maybe it's Guerendo. Like maybe Guerendo's the actual handcuff, even though Brian Robinson's sort of the more veteran presence. I think Brian Robinson sort of stays more similar. Guerendo's the guy who sees the variance if CMC were to get hurt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think I'd probably still lean towards it's Brian Robinson over Guerendo, sure, but I'm not quite ready to cut him yet.
Right.
Jonathan Brooks, another guy sitting on my IR in a couple of different leagues. One of my big misses from the 2024 draft class. We do not expect Jonathan Brooks to play this year. Is it over?
Yeah, me too. I have a lot of Jonathan Brooks. I missed big time. I actually overplayed the Jonathan Brooks hand last year in rookie drafts. Of course, injuries are a tough way to say you messed up.
Right.
Maybe the dude was good. Maybe he's still good. Obviously, with 2 injuries in 2 years, it gets a little thin as to whether or not he can come back and play. However, he's super young. And I think it's not over. I think there's a potential. I'm keeping him everywhere. I'm never going to drop him. I'm not really looking to sell. But yeah, it's not over.
I've not cut him anywhere. And I couldn't get anything for him if I wanted to trade him. So
right.
Jaden Reed, I'm obviously not asking if his career is over.
Yeah.
But the Packers go draft a very good wide receiver in round 1. Reed's not had a 100 target season in his first 2 years, and now he has more competition. Oh yeah, and he has a Jones fracture that he's decided he's just going to play through. It's not a big deal. Is the idea of Jaden Reed as a must-start wide receiver over?
For sure. Yeah. The injury is the biggest one because, at some point or another, it just could be, makes it over for him this year. And then it becomes harder for him. So yeah, the way you asked the question, that's over for right now, at least.
So that's what I was going to say. He's 25 years old. If we're just thinking, the chances of him becoming a must-start wide receiver are next year when he's 26 and now Matthew Golden's a year 2 guy. I think even then I don't have much optimism. I think it's like he is a high upside flex and you hope he has a 40-yard rushing touchdown this week. And then he's a top 12 wide receiver.
Yeah, and I'm willing to sell wide receivers. Like I love Jaden Reed, which is, so this will tell you. I mean, I think he's awesome. He's very cool. Love him. But I've been selling him where I can, for, early seconds. I sold him for a late first that I think it was the 112 in one league before the playoffs last year. Like, yeah, I've been selling Jaden Reed because he's a replaceable production asset, and the value is never really going to be like multiple firsts. Right. So if you can get sort of a 1-2 type, value like late first, early second, yeah, why not? And I think the value's probably even fallen a little bit from there at this particular point, given the injury and uncertainty.
We are moving into the most painful part of the show.
Okay.
The one guy I have on more IR lists than Jonathan Brooks is Tank Dell. And man, when Tank Dell was my most rostered wide receiver in Dynasty, it felt good for a little while.
Yep.
And then we have a broken leg. And then we have the catastrophic injury last year. Another guy we don't think is going to play this year. One of the concerns coming in was the size and could he hold up in the NFL? They draft Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Is it over for Tank Dell?
In Houston, for sure it is, I think. It's the saddest thing because he was awesome and we love watching him play, and he is a dope football player, and you were right. And also, he got hurt. Does that make the skeptics correct? I guess it does, but you never know. I mean, you sim this thing 1,000 times. Does he not get hurt? He got hurt on field goal, right, or extra point. So the first time, obviously the last time you watch that, it's like I don't care how little or big you are. That was catastrophic, as you point out. So yeah, I've got him on IRs too. I did sell him once this offseason for a couple of thirds or something like that, which felt pretty good. Like, especially before the draft where I was able to, who knows, maybe I got Fannin from that, you know what I mean? So for sure, like that was a great sell. And a lot of times, you're just looking for the opportunity to sell at the right time. I would say that, if you're a contender, maybe you can sell, a Jonathan Brooks Tank Dell combo to a rebuilder and maybe just get some sort of productive running back or something like that.
An old flex.
Yeah. No, because you're probably not going to get, draft, capital for them, but maybe you can get some production from them if you don't believe.
On the other end of the spectrum, Cooper Kupp, and I've brought this stat up a couple of times throughout the offseason, so sorry to you guys who listen to every show and have heard it a bunch, but was on track on a 17-game pace for 1,200 yards and 170 targets through week 14 last year. It was per game averages, 10 targets a game, 70 yards a game. And then the last month of the season, he just played, but was completely irrelevant. Now he goes to Seattle, where he's at worst the clear number 2 wide receiver. And I've drafted a lot of them. I've got him on a few dynasty teams. I think as long as he's healthy, he's going to be a top 36 wide receiver. Everybody else thinks it's over. So I'll ask you, is it over?
I think it is over. I think he's going to be fine for a period of time. But the Triple Crown was the anomaly. If you look at his career, do you know how many times he was over 1,000 yards receiving?
Twice.
Once in 2019 and the Triple Crown in 2021. Other than that, like he's only really been over 900 one other time. So like
Right.
he's kind of not been what we sort of think he is because of the Triple Crown. He's been fine, and I think he'll be fine again, but I don't think he's ever was, the player we sort of thought he was. The Triple Crown's the aberration. I mean, it really is,
I just wonder, because I think it was 16 fantasy points per game he was averaging through week 14. So if you get 9, he'll be fine. Like if we're saying he's going to have 900 yards this year and catch 6 touchdowns, or 800 yards and 6 touchdowns. Well, if that happens in 17 games, it's completely worthless.
Right.
If that happens in half a season, then you got a very good starting wide receiver for 8 games.
Yes.
And then replaced him with someone else.
Yeah,
so,
I think part of the reason that you mentioned that is because he hasn't played 17 games since the Triple Crown, right? He's played 9, 12, and 12. So to your point, also injury, attrition, whatever it is, age, I don't know. He's going to be 32 years old if he isn't already. And, some of that, I'm not so sure. I'm very skeptical. I also, in that pass offense, right now, Torrey Horton's pretty dope. Might Torrey Horton and probably will Torrey Horton play in 2 wide receiver sets, because if they're playing 2 tight end or something like that,
right.
Torrey Horton is the guy who can take it deep and can really stretch the defense. If you have just JSN and just Cooper Kupp, boy, oh boy, that defense can really sink in because there's not a deep threat on the field. So I don't know, man. I wonder just exactly how this plays out. And of course, if we're playing, does this wide receiver get injured? Bingo. You'd be looking for the Cooper Kupp square for sure.
100%. I do think the JSN role is going to be really interesting because there's been some talk about him going downfield more this year and Kupp working underneath. And that could be very interesting when Kupp's healthy for the target share between those two with Sam Darnold at quarterback. So it's true. Really, really interesting. We got one more name here. Jalen McMillan. He's hurt. Emeka Egbuka's awesome. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are still there. Jalen McMillan looked like found money for about a month last season. Is it over?
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, Godwin's situation, I mean, are we sure that he just makes it all the way back and is 100%? Certainly the drafting market does not think so, because I see him sliding in redrafts. I see him sliding everywhere. Like, people are not very confident that Godwin at his age and with the injury, and I think there was a photo of, I didn't look, I think there was a photo of his leg, did not look good from what I'm told. Google it if you care to, but like all these sort of data points have scared people off Godwin, including Emeka Egbuka. But even if we just look at Godwin in a vacuum, if he doesn't get all the way back, or if he re-injures himself or whatever sort of, father time is undefeated type of thing, and Evans is getting there.
32.
What if it's, once McMillan's back, I think he actually could have a role alongside and with Emeka Egbuka. For sure, it's possible. So
maybe next year, the top 2 wide receivers on Tampa Bay are Emeka Egbuka and Jalen McMillan. I think the Bucs fans are probably hoping one of Evans or Godwin still around at that point.
For sure.
Awesome stuff as always. Really appreciate you coming on. Just tell people what they can expect from you guys in the off season, in the season. It's not the off season anymore.
During the season. Yeah. I mean, we're, obviously The Undrafted is my podcast and show that I've been doing for many years, and people love it. And thank you so much for the support. But the Dynasty Underground is entering its first year, first regular season, if you will. We did this on purpose. We started the show the day the season ended. Like we were like, off season, perfect. That's our game. Let's get in here. And so kind of a statement there. But this is our first regular season. I think we're gonna have a lot of fun with that show. Me, Trav, and Joe just sort of, I don't know. The vibes are immaculate, as they say. So we're having fun with that. So check it out.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Nada, for making everything work behind the scenes. Thank you to everyone who was active in the chat. We will talk to you next Tuesday.